Welcome to the InnoGuide Podcast, where we share the works of authors and mentors to guide innovation. In this episode, number 37, we'll be sharing The Startup Way, Part 2, by Eric Ries. Chapter 7, Phase 2, Scaling Up. Let's talk about the tipping point, the moment when an organization moves from experimenting with new methods to scaling them across the board. This is Phase 2 of transformation, where the groundwork laid in Phase 1 pays off and the organization begins to deploy its new way of working on a much larger scale. Whether the transformation is driven by a planned initiative, a crisis, or rapid growth, this phase is all about momentum. And trust me, when change happens, it can happen fast. The energy of transformation. Scaling up unleashes a tremendous amount of creativity and energy. It's the moment when impossible seeming things suddenly become possible. But there's a catch. You have to be ready. By the time you hit Phase 2, the new playbook should already be tested and refined. This is not the time for baby steps or learning new theories. It's time for action. At GE, for example, we moved from proving that lean startup methods worked in isolated projects to demonstrating that they could be applied across the entire company. In the federal government, the success of the Presidential Innovation Fellows Program led to the creation of the U.S. Digital Service, USDS, and 18F, two organizations that brought digital transformation to every agency. Key in both cases was scaling up quickly and decisively. Common patterns in Phase 2. While every organization's journey is unique, there are some common patterns that emerge during this phase. 1. Review and address challenges from Phase 1. The lessons learned from early pilot projects, both successes and failures, become the foundation for scaling. What worked, what didn't, what systemic issues need to be addressed. 2. Roll out a system for the new way of working. This includes training, tools, and processes to ensure the new methods are adopted consistently across the organization. 3. Leverage executive champions. Senior leaders play a critical role in clearing obstacles and reinforcing the importance of the transformation. 4. Engage internal functions. Functions like HR, legal, and finance must be brought into the process to ensure they support rather than hinder innovation. 5. Establish coaching programs. Internal coaches help teams adopt the new methods and provide ongoing support. And 6. Implement metered funding and growth boards. These mechanisms replace traditional budgeting and resource allocation with a system that rewards validated learning and progress. The GE Roadshow, Scaling Fast Works. At GE, Phase 2 began with a whirlwind roadshow. Jeff Immelt, GE's CEO, wanted the FastWorks methodology rolled out across the company in just 6 months. This meant training thousands of executives and launching nearly 100 new projects in record time. It was an intense period of workshops, coaching, and real-world application. One of the most effective tools we used was the whiteboard method. In one workshop, a division president asked each of his leaders to commit to a specific project and name the person responsible for it. He then announced that he would personally meet with each of those people at the end of the quarter to review their progress. This level of accountability sent a clear message. This transformation was non-negotiable. Scaling a new way of working is a lot like introducing a new product to the market. Early adopters are enthusiastic, but mainstream managers are often skeptical. This is where executive champions and internal success stories become invaluable. At GE, we used examples from every division to show that the new methods worked, even in the most traditional parts of the company. One memorable story involved Michael Mahon, who led a refrigerator project that was initially canceled. They built prototypes, tested them with customers, and eventually gained enough traction to bring the project back into the official FastWorks program. Mahon's persistence not only saved the project, but also earned him a promotion. The role of executive champions. Executive champions are critical in Phase 2. Their job is to clear systemic obstacles and advocate for a new way of working. At GE, we saw this in action when the CEO approved a project's budget, resolved HR issues, and secured finance support, all in a single meeting. This kind of decisive leadership sends a powerful message to the organization. Innovation is a priority. Even at the highest levels, executive championship can make a difference. When the U.S. Digital Service was recruiting technologists, President Obama personally met with candidates to emphasize the importance of their work. His involvement inspired many to join, proving that leadership from the top can have a profound impact. Building internal coaching programs. Coaching is essential for scaling transformation. At GE, we trained internal coaches to support teams as they adopted the new methods. These coaches weren't just advisors, they were champions of the new way of working, helping teams navigate challenges and stay focused on their goals. Other companies like IBM and Cisco have also embraced coaching. IBM uses a program called The Agile Doctor is In, where teams can schedule sessions with coaches to solve specific problems. Cisco's My Innovation program trains coaches in design thinking, business strategy, and technical skills, ensuring teams have the support they need to succeed. Metered funding and growth boards. Traditional corporate budgeting often stifles innovation. That's why we introduced metered funding, which provides teams with just enough resources to test their ideas and unlocks additional funding based on validated learning. This approach encourages teams to focus on outcomes rather than politics. Growth boards play a similar role, holding teams accountable for their progress and ensuring resources are allocated based on merit. At GE, growth boards became a cornerstone of the FastWorks program, helping teams move quickly and efficiently. By the end of Phase 2, organizations like GE and the federal government had trained thousands of people, launched hundreds of projects, and built a portfolio of successes and failures. But even at this scale, the transformation was still vulnerable to resistance and setbacks. The only way to ensure lasting change is to tackle the deep systems of the organization, its incentives, accountability structures, and resource allocation processes. This is where Phase 3 comes in. Stay tuned for the next chapter, where we'll explore how to address these systemic challenges and make transformation permanent. Chapter 8, Phase 3, Deep Systems. Let's talk about the moment when a company truly grows up. I call it the second founding. It's the point where an organization transitions from being a scrappy startup to becoming a lasting institution. But this is also the moment when companies lose their innovative edge. Bureaucracy creeps in, frustration builds, and the most creative people either leave or get sidelined. Challenge of Phase 3 is to avoid this fate by transforming the deep systems of the organization to support continuous innovation. This is where the real work begins, changing the very DNA of the company. The second founding, Airbnb story. Let's start with Airbnb. After its initial success, the company faced a critical question: what's next? Brian Chesky, one of Airbnb's founders, found inspiration in Walt Disney's storyboarding process for Snow White. This led to Project Snow White, where a Pixar artist storyboarded an entire trip from start to finish, from the perspectives of the host and the guest. The team realized Airbnb was absent from most of the trip experience, sparking the idea of curating end-to-end trips. But the project stalled. To reignite momentum, Airbnb launched a startup within a startup. A small team led by co-founder Joe Gebbia spent 3 months in New York testing ideas. They returned with the concept of the experience marketplace, where hosts could offer unique experiences to guests. The project was revived, and Chesky himself joined the team as project leader, providing both executive support and moral authority. The team adopted a scrappy startup-like approach, iterating on the concept for 2 years. The result? A new product that expanded Airbnb's reach and redefined its role in the travel industry. Chesky's mantra, inspired by Elon Musk, was clear: Airbnb will never be in the administration era. It will always be in a building era. Building the plane while flying it. Phase 3 is about building systems that allow innovation to thrive at scale. It's like constructing an airplane mid-flight. Early in a transformation, it's fine to operate by exception, bending rules and making ad hoc decisions to get things done. But for long-term success, the systems themselves need to change. Procurement, compliance, finance, IT, HR. Every function must evolve to support the new way of working. At GE, for example, in its early FastWorks projects, teams often ran into roadblocks with legal, finance, and other gatekeeper functions. One team, frustrated by the legal department's slow approval process, worked with the general counsel to create a one-page document outlining pre-approved parameters for experiments. This simple change turned legal from a gatekeeper into an enabler, speeding up innovation across the company. Transforming gatekeeper functions. Let's look at how other organizations tackled their deep systems. Number 1. Legal at Pivotal. Pivotal's legal team worked with engineers to streamline the process, for using open source software. They automated license checks and created a green, yellow, red system to indicate which licenses were approved. This reduced delays and built trust with customers, all while requiring only 2 part-time lawyers. 2. Finance at GE. GE consolidated over 500 ERP systems into fewer than 100 by adopting a lean approach. Instead of building massive systems all at once, they started small, focusing on the biggest pain points in each country. This reduced deployment time from 18 months to 4 to 6 months and saved millions of dollars. IT at USCIS. The U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service, USCIS, moved from a paper-based system to a digital one with the help of the U.S. Digital Service, USDS. By observing how applications were processed in a literal cave, the team developed a user-centered system that reduced processing times and improved customer satisfaction. So why was it done in a cave? Because the weight of the paper was too heavy to be placed in any building, and that's the absolute truth. Number 4, HR at GE. GE's employment management system, EMS, was a major roadblock to innovation. Engineers avoided taking risks because the system penalized rework even when it led to better outcomes. GE replaced EMS with a new performance development system, PD at GE, which focused on continuous feedback and learning. The new system was tested with small cohorts before being rolled out company-wide, eventually reaching 90,000 employees. Cultural transformation, innovation everywhere. True transformation happens when innovation becomes part of the culture. At GE, this mindset extended beyond product development to everyday tasks like job postings and presentations. Employees were encouraged to ask, how can I do this better? Through programs like FastWorks Every Day, which trained over 30,000 employees in lean principles. Other companies like Asana took a similar approach. Asana treated its culture as a product, iterating on its core values and addressing cultural bugs just like software bugs. For example, when junior employees felt falsely empowered, the company restructured decision-making processes to ensure their voices were heard. Social innovation, Intuit's aha benefit. Innovation doesn't have to be limited to products. At Intuit, a team of 5 employees created a mobile app for an American Heart Association benefit. The app displayed real-time fundraising progress on a screen, motivating attendees to work together to reach their goal. The result? The event raised $170,000 more than the previous year, and the app was later made available for free to other organizations. The goal: a portfolio of startups. The ultimate aim of Phase 3 is to turn the entire organization into a portfolio of startups. This means embracing experimentation, accepting a high failure rate, and scaling successful projects. At GE, this approach led to the creation of Sustainable Healthcare Solutions, SHS, a new business focused on affordable healthcare technologies for emerging markets. SHS started with a $6.5 million investment and grew into a $300 million business, improving patient care while generating significant revenue. Phase 3 is where the real magic happens. It's not just about launching new products or processes. It's about embedding innovation into the very fabric of the organization. This requires transforming deep systems, empowering employees, and fostering a culture of continuous improvement. It's hard work, but the payoff is enormous. A company that's not just built to last, but built to innovate. And now as we move forward, we'll dive into the glue that holds all of this together: innovation accounting. Chapter 9, Innovation Accounting. Let's talk about another topic that doesn't exactly scream excitement: accounting. Stick with me because this is where the magic happens. If we want to create a system of continuous innovation, we need to rethink how we measure progress. Traditional accounting just doesn't cut it for startups or innovation projects. That's where innovation accounting comes in, a framework that helps us evaluate progress where the usual metrics like revenue, ROI, or market share are effectively zero. It's not flashy, but it's essential. The problem with traditional metrics. Let me take you back to the early days of IMVU, the company I co-founded in 2004. When we pitched to venture capitalists, our numbers were embarrassingly small, but the VCs who invested in us weren't looking at vanity metrics. They saw 2 things. 1, our per-customer metrics were promising, and 2, the changes in those metrics over time suggested we were onto something. They understood that early results, while small, could be leading indicators of future success. Now imagine pitching those same numbers to a corporate finance team. Most would pull the plug immediately, dismissing the results as insignificant. This is the core dilemma innovation teams face. How do you convince stakeholders to invest in something that looks like a failure on paper? The answer lies in a new way of measuring progress, one that focuses on learning and leading indicators rather than traditional finance outcomes. So what is innovation accounting? Innovation accounting, IA, is a system for measuring progress in innovation projects. It's not about innovative accounting, the kind that lands you in jail. Instead, it's a rigorous framework that tracks progress using leading indicators that predict future success. It focuses teams on testing their most critical assumptions. It provides a common language for negotiating resources across teams and divisions. And it quantifies learning in terms of future cash flows, tying it back to the startup valuation formula: asset value, probability of success, and magnitude of success. In short, IA translates the vague language of learning into the hard language of dollars. It's how we show that small early numbers can grow into big ones without relying on naive extrapolation. The 3 levels of innovation accounting. To make IA practical, I break it down into 3 levels. Each level builds on the previous one, allowing teams to mature their practices as they grow. Level 1, dashboard. At this stage, teams track simple, actionable metrics that demonstrate validated learning. These metrics focus on customer behavior such as conversion rates, such as free trial to paying customer, revenue per customer, retention rates, cost per customer, and referral rates. The goal is to show improvement over time. For example, if your revenue per customer starts at $0 and grows to $1, that's progress. Even if your ultimate goal is $100, the key is to focus on the drivers of growth, not just the outputs like ROI or market share. Level 2, business case. Once the teams have a basic dashboard, they move to level 2, where they build a more comprehensive business case. This includes metrics for both the value hypothesis, such as repeat purchases and retention, and the growth hypothesis, such as referrals and viral growth. The idea is to connect these metrics to the assumptions in the business plan, creating a clear picture of how the business will succeed. For example, if you're using a sticky engine of growth, you'll track whether your retention rate is higher than your attrition rate. If you're using a viral engine of growth, you'll measure how many new customers each existing customer brings in. These metrics provide a quantitative foundation for evaluating product market fit. Level 3, net present value. At level 3, teams translate their learning into financial terms by rerunning the business model with updated metrics. This allows them to calculate the net present value and PV of their project based on real data. Every new experiment updates the model, showing how small improvements, such as increasing conversion rates from 1% to 2%, can have a big impact on future cash flows. This level provides a rigorous way to show progress over time. Instead of comparing current results to the fantasy plan, teams compare them to previous milestones, creating a clear trajectory of improvement. Innovation accounting at scale. IA isn't just for individual teams. It can be scaled across entire organizations. By creating dashboards and accountability frameworks at the team, division, and enterprise levels, companies can track progress across portfolios of projects. This approach ensures that resources are allocated to the most promising initiatives and that teams are held accountable for their results. For example, GE's FastWorks program used IA to transform its innovation progress. Each project had a high-potential leader from the corporate audit staff who helped build the models required for IA. Over time, GE developed a system of growth boards to evaluate and fund projects, creating a venture capital-like model within the company. Growth boards, the venture capital model for corporations. A growth board is like an internal version of a startup board. It's a group of leaders who meet regularly to evaluate projects, make funding decisions, and hold teams accountable. Growth boards operate on 3 principles. 1, accountability. Teams must show validated learnings to receive additional funding. 2, transparency. Growth boards act as a central clearinghouse for information, reducing the burden on the teams to provide constant updates. 3, metered funding. Teams receive funding in small increments based on their progress. For example, Dropbox uses growth boards to oversee its innovation initiatives. Teams present their progress every 2 months, and the board decides whether to continue funding, pivot, or shut down the project. This approach ensures that resources are focused on the most promising ideas. Real-world examples. GE Oil and Gas. GE Oil and Gas implemented growth boards to evaluate its innovation projects. Initially, only 10% of the projects were being canceled. After introducing growth boards, that number rose to 50%, with many projects being stopped after just 60 days. This shift saved money and empowered teams to make better decisions. Citi's D10X program. Citi's Discover 10X program used growth boards to fund and evaluate innovation projects. Teams receive small amounts of funding to validate their ideas, with 30 to 40% of projects advancing to the next stage. This process has created a culture of experimentation and customer validation, allowing Citi to better serve its clients. Innovation accounting is the backbone of a successful innovation system. It provides the tools to measure progress, allocate resources, and hold teams accountable, all while fostering a culture of learning and experimentation. It's not glamorous, but it's how we turn small, early wins into big, lasting successes. As we move forward, we'll explore how to build the organizational structures needed to support this new way of working. Chapter 10. Part 3, The Big Picture. Let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. You might be wondering, what comes after Phase 3? When is the transformation done? The truth is, once the startup way becomes part of an organization's DNA, it's no longer transformation, it's just how the company operates. The cycle of continuous innovation becomes ingrained, and the organization is ready for the next challenge, continuous transformation. This isn't about tweaking a process here or there. It's about creating a system that can adapt, evolve, and transform the very structure of the organization itself. And to do that, we need a rigorous entrepreneurial approach. Continuous transformation, a new kind of leadership. Founders who've built a company culture from scratch have a unique advantage when it comes to leading transformations. They bring moral authority and the skills to drive change. But here's the exciting part. When you're refounding a company using the startup way, you create a new generation of leaders who think experimentally, empower teams, and hold them accountable through innovation accounting. These leaders become the go-to people for future transformations. They're the ones who can guide the organization through the next big change. And just like any startup, these transformations require experimentation, MVPs, and a willingness to take risks. Transformation as entrepreneurship. Here's the key idea. A corporate transformation is a startup. It's risky, fast-paced, and has potential for massive ROI. It requires the same governance, funding, and processes as any external startup. That's why we need to treat organizational change as part of the missing function of entrepreneurship. This means creating career paths, accountability systems, and cross-training for people who can lead these transformations. It's not just about building new products, it's about building new ways of working. In Part 2, we focused on the mechanics of transformation. Now in Part 3, we're zooming out to ask, where should the engine of continuous transformation live in an organization? And how can it be used to change not just companies, but society as a whole? Imagine a world where organizations are constantly evolving, where innovation isn't just a buzzword but a way of life. What would that look like? How could we reshape the way we design policies, support people, and build economies? These are big questions, but they're worth asking. Chapter 10, A Unified Theory of Entrepreneurship. Let's be real for a moment. I'm not claiming to have invented the perfect management system for all time. The world is changing too fast for that. What I am saying is this: the startup way is a framework for continuous transformation. It's not about achieving a static state of perfection. It's about creating a system that can evolve and adapt. One company I worked with went through several iterations of their lean startup system, from version 1.0 to 4.0. They were worried I'd be upset because they were adding new techniques, but nothing made me happier. The goal isn't orthodoxy, it's progress. When a transformation reaches scale, it's time to start a new one. Test, experiment, and learn. If the new approach works, integrate it. If not, move on. This is how we shift from one-time transformations to continuous transformation. Corporate entrepreneurship. Let's revisit the definition of a startup. a human institution designed to create a new product or service under conditions of extreme uncertainty. By this definition, many people in organizations are entrepreneurs. It's not just about job titles, it's about context. Whether you're launching a new product, entering a new market, or overhauling an internal system, you're operating under uncertainty. Take Janice Sempler at GE, who led the Performance Development Project, or an IT manager implementing a radical new system. These are entrepreneurial efforts, even if they don't look like traditional startups. Complete transformation is corporate entrepreneurship. It's just as difficult, uncertain, and rewarding as any other kind of entrepreneurship. A unified function for entrepreneurship. Let's break this down. Most organizations, regardless of size, engage in 4 key activities. 1. Building new products and seeking new sources of growth. 2. Developing internal systems, such as IT platforms or HR policies. 3. Corporate development, which includes acquisitions, spin-outs, venture funding, and licensing. And 4. Organizational transformation, like introducing new ways of working or restructuring the company. These activities have more in common than you might think. They all involve uncertainty, experimentation, and the need for entrepreneurial leadership. That's why I believe they should be managed under a single unified function, the missing function of entrepreneurship. This function isn't just about creating a new job title or department. It's about ensuring that entrepreneurship is treated as a core capability within the organization. To do this, companies need to do these 7 things. 1. Assign responsibility for entrepreneurship to someone. Too many organizations have no one accountable for this critical function. 2. Give real operating authority to those responsible. They shouldn't be just futurists or idea generators. They need the power to act. 3. Create career paths for entrepreneurial talent with specialized performance development processes. 4. Facilitate cross-training for entrepreneurs across different areas like product development, corporate transformation, and venture funding. 5. Provide training, mentorship, and support to foster excellence in entrepreneurship. 6. Educate non-entrepreneurs in the organization to adopt entrepreneurial ways of working, even if they're not directly driving change. And 7. Include entrepreneurship in key decisions made by gatekeeper functions like finance, legal, HR, and IT. By formalizing this function, organizations can create a system that supports entrepreneurship at every level. It's not just about launching new products, it's about building a culture of innovation that touches every part of the business. Now let's talk about the ultimate goal, continuous transformation. This is the ability of an organization to test and learn from experiments about its own structure and processes, promoting what works and discarding what doesn't. The leaders we met in this book, like Janice Semper at GE or Todd Park in government, are corporate entrepreneurs. They're not just managing change, they're driving it. But to succeed, they need the same support as any startup founder. Secure but limited funding to get started. Access to scalable resources when they prove the need. Clear accountability standards to measure progress. A commitment to the truth about whether their transformation is working. A cross-functional dedicated team to execute their vision. And a growth board to oversee their progress and make funding decisions. If your organization doesn't have someone leading a transformation, that's a problem. And if they're not being treated like a real entrepreneur, that's something leadership needs to fix immediately. But even if your company has embraced the startup way, the work isn't done. Transformation isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing process. The real power of continuous transformation is that it creates a system for solving challenges with speed and flexibility. It allows organizations to adapt to change, retain their best talent, and build a culture of innovation. And the best part, it's not just about creating better companies, it's about building a better, more inclusive and innovative society. That's the true promise of the startup way. Chapter 11. Toward a Pro-Entrepreneurship Public Policy. Let's talk about something that doesn't get enough attention, how public policy can foster entrepreneurship. If you're a policymaker reading this, welcome. You might not think of yourself as an entrepreneur, but I hope this chapter changes your mind. Entrepreneurship isn't just about starting businesses. It's about creating ecosystems where innovation thrives. We've seen how companies and venture capitalists build these ecosystems, but public policy plays a critical role too. In fact, the principles of entrepreneurship can and should be applied to policymaking itself. Policy, not politics. A truly pro-entrepreneurship public policy doesn't fit neatly into traditional political categories. It requires a mix of approaches. Pro-business policies, like reducing regulation, increasing competition, and fostering public-private partnerships. Pro-worker policies, like portable health insurance, abolishing non-compete clauses, and sensible immigration reform. And bipartisan reforms, like patent reform, open data initiatives, and investments in education infrastructure and R&D. If we want more people to become entrepreneurs, we need to think about what they were doing before they started their companies. Most entrepreneurs aren't former CEOs. They're students, workers, immigrants, and mid-level managers. Public policy needs to create the conditions that makes entrepreneurship accessible to everyone, not just the privileged few. What motivates entrepreneurs? Through years of coaching entrepreneurs, I found 3 factors influence whether someone takes the leap. 1. Vision and upside. Entrepreneurs are driven by a desire to improve the world, but they also need to see a clear payoff, whether financial or otherwise. Policies that inspire people to dream big and believe in their ideas can increase the rate of entrepreneurship. 2. Skills and resources. Most people don't pursue their dreams because they don't know where to start or lack access to resources. Policies that provide education, mentorship, and funding can help people take those first steps. And 3. Risks and liabilities. Fear of failure is a huge barrier. Starting a company is easier if you don't have dependents, a mortgage, or the risk of professional ruin. Policies that cushion the consequences of failure without creating moral hazard can encourage more people to try. Ideas for a pro-entrepreneurship environment. Here are some ideas for creating a truly pro-entrepreneurship public policy. 1. Nurturing human capital. Health insurance. Before the Affordable Care Act, many would-be entrepreneurs were held back by concerns about losing health coverage. Policies that decouple health insurance from employment can remove this barrier. Entrepreneurial education. Teaching entrepreneurial skills in schools can create a new generation of innovators. Programs like Steve Blank's Hacking for Defense and the National Science Foundation's I-Corps are great examples of how education can foster entrepreneurship. Immigration reform. Immigrants are a driving force behind innovation. 44% of Silicon Valley startups have immigrant founders. A startup visa or policies that make it easier for immigrant entrepreneurs to stay in the U.S. would have a huge impact. 2. Reducing barriers to entry. Sliding scale regulations. Regulations should be proportional to a company's size and stage. Small startups shouldn't face the same regulatory burden as large corporations. Non-compete agreements. California's refusal to enforce non-compete clauses has been a key factor in its thriving entrepreneurial culture. Other states should follow suit. Patent reform. Patents should protect innovation, not stifle it. Reforms are needed to prevent large companies from using patents to crush startups. 3. Support risk-taking. Unemployment insurance for entrepreneurs. Allowing unemployed individuals to convert their benefits into small business loans could encourage more people to start companies. Microloans. A government-run microloan program could provide small amounts of startup capital to ordinary citizens, with credit limits increasing as loans are repaid. And Universal Basic Income, UBI. UBI could reduce the risks of entrepreneurship by providing a safety net. Experiments in Finland, France, and Oakland, California are already exploring how UBI can encourage innovation. Civic reforms. Entrepreneurship isn't just for businesses. It can drive social good too. Lean methods for social impact. Programs like USAID's Global Development Lab and Lean Impact are using entrepreneurial techniques to tackle global challenges. Open data. Government initiatives like data.gov to make public data accessible, fueling innovation in areas like public safety, healthcare, and education. One of the biggest challenges for entrepreneurs is the short-term focus of public markets. Companies are pressured to maximize quarterly returns, often at the expense of long-term value creation. To address this, I've launched the Long-Term Stock Exchange, LTSE. It's a new kind of stock exchange designed to reward long-term thinking. Companies listed on the LTSE will align governance, compensation, and disclosure practices with long-term goals. Minimum viable politics. Finally, we need to find common ground. A pro-entrepreneurship public policy can bridge partisan divides by focusing on shared values, creating opportunities, fostering innovation, and building a more dynamic economy. This isn't just about creating better companies, it's about building a better society. By empowering more people to become entrepreneurs, we can unlock human potential and create a future that benefits everyone. And that's the real promise of a pro-entrepreneurship public policy. Let's make it happen. Epilogue: A new civic religion. As we close this journey, let's reflect on the bigger picture. The Startup Way has been about equipping leaders and organizations to face the challenges of the 21st century. But the changes we've seen so far are just the beginning. The future will demand even more adaptability, creativity, and resilience. The management system I've outlined in this book isn't the final answer. It's a starting point, a system designed to evolve. By embedding experimentation into the very fabric of organizations, we can create structures that adapt to new technologies and challenges. And to do this, we need to embrace entrepreneurship as a core skill for everyone, because the best ideas often come from the most unexpected places. The four horsemen of economic stagnation. The future isn't without its dangers. We've already seen signs of stagnation in four critical areas. 1. An epidemic of short-termism. Companies are prioritizing financial engineering over customer value, staying private longer, and failing to invest in the next generation. This short-term focus is choking sustainable growth. 2. Lack of entrepreneurial opportunity. While high-growth startups are thriving, opportunities for small businesses are shrinking. The ladders of advancement that once supported the middle class are disappearing, and new ones aren't being built fast enough. 3. A loss of leadership. Too many leaders, both in business and politics, are focused on preserving past gains rather than investing in the future. This lack of vision threatens the progress in R&D, shared prosperity, and scientific breakthroughs. And 4. Low growth and instability. As corporate structures evolve, fewer people are finding opportunities to participate in the economy. A retreat from globalization and low investment returns are fueling despair among those left behind. These challenges are interconnected, and poor management is at the heart of the problem. Research shows that better management practices can significantly boost productivity and growth. That's why the entrepreneurial system described in this book is so important. It's a tool for creating better leaders, better organizations, and a better future. A vision for the future. Entrepreneurship isn't a magic cure, but it's a critical part of the solution. To build a better future, we need to embrace a new vision for liberal democracy, one that leverages technology and innovation to deliver shared prosperity. The vision rests on 6 pillars. Number 1, broadly shared prosperity, ensuring that economic growth benefits everyone, not just a select few. 2, democratic accountability, holding leaders and institutions accountable to the people they serve. 3, scientific inquiry and truth-telling, using evidence-based approaches to solve problems and make decisions. 4, long-term thinking, prioritizing investments that create lasting value over short-term gains. 5, universal entrepreneurial opportunity, making entrepreneurship accessible to people of all backgrounds. And 6, investment in public goods, funding education, healthcare, infrastructure, and R&D to benefit society as a whole. This vision requires more than just good ideas. It demands action. We need to harness the tools of human creativity, from the arts to education, to build a society that embraces change and disruption as opportunities for renewal. The Entrepreneurial Bill of Rights. To create organizations that thrive in the future, we need to treat talent and creativity as precious resources. Every organization should guarantee its members these 5 rights. 1, the right to know your work is meaningful to someone beyond your boss. 2, the right to have your idea turned into a minimum viable product and evaluated fairly. 3, the right to become an entrepreneur, as long as you're willing to do the hard work. 4, the right to stay involved with your idea as it scales, as long as you contribute productively. And 5, the right to equity ownership in the growth you help create, regardless of your role or title. Organizations that fail to adopt these principles will be left behind. Just ask your local taxi company how it feels to compete with Uber. A movement for change. The goals of this movement are ambitious but achievable. 1, shift incentives from short-term to long-term thinking. 2, reverse the decline in new business formation by making entrepreneurship accessible to all. 3, reduce bureaucracy in large organizations and foster organic growth through innovation. 4, Build an economy that's inclusive, sustainable, and innovative. This transformation won't happen overnight. It will require a vast movement of like-minded people, managers, founders, investors, and idealists working together to integrate these values into every industry, geography, and sector. The road ahead won't be easy. Resistance will come from all sides, but progress is possible. I've seen it firsthand in the stories shared throughout this book. These examples are just the beginning. So here's my challenge to you. Take what you've learned, use it as a launching pad. Build on these ideas, surpass what we've accomplished so far. The future is waiting. This has been part 2 of The Startup Way by Eric Ries. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you'd love to learn more, there are many more examples and a lot more detail in the book. Please pick up a copy of the book, The Startup Way by Eric Ries, if you're interested in learning more. That's where we'll leave it. Thanks for joining. That's a wrap.